Hey guys, my name's Stephanie Rigg. I'm a relationship coach and host of the On Attachment podcast. And in this video, I'm going to be sharing 5 ways to support your avoidant partner. So if you're someone who's in relationship with someone with avoidant attachment patterns, it can be really hard, particularly if you lean more towards anxious attachment, as will often be the case, to know how best to love and support them in a way that makes space for the ways in which you're different. And I think that this is a really important conversation. And for me, as someone who leans more anxious in relationship with someone who leans more avoidant, I can relate firsthand to all of this. And I wanted to share 5 tips that have really helped me and have helped lots and lots of others who I've worked with. So let's dive in. The first one that I want to share is do not villainize them. I think it's really, really easy for avoidant folks to be painted as the villain, as the problem in the relationship. And for people with more anxious patterns, because we tend to be so focused on the other person anyway, it's really easy to go into this pattern of you just need to change all of these things and then everything will be good in our relationship. So if you were more of this and less of that, and if you stop doing this, then everything would be fine and we'd be happy. And while it can feel very true when you're in it, and trust me, I get it, I relate to it, when we zoom out from that and look at it from a more objective viewpoint, of course, having that energy coming at you is going to be really, really overwhelming and disheartening and demoralizing, particularly when it's combined with the anxious attachment tendency to always be raising the bar or moving the goalposts, which is probably something I could do a whole video about in and of itself. But anxious people do tend to almost play whack-a-mole with all the problems in the relationship. It's like, you're not doing enough of this thing. And then they make a change and it's like, yeah, but what about this? And what about this? And so it's just like this constant thing of not enough, not enough. And we could dive into why that is. But suffice it to say that if you're coming at your partner with this energy of telling them all the ways that they are not good enough, bad, wrong, they're the problem, obviously that's not going to be creating a culture of loving, openness, growth, safety in your relationship. So the second tip that I wanted to share on how to support an avoidant partner is respect their need for space. Now, again, if you're more anxious, you're going to have different baseline needs in terms of togetherness and separateness. And I actually think that this is part of the gift of anxious avoidant relationships if you manage to do it well. That is that for anxious folks, you're going to need to compromise a bit on how much time together and apart you would prefer. Now, this doesn't mean just totally capitulating to the other person's preferences and them having free reign to decide that they get to take as much space as they want whenever they want it. Of course, relationships are about meeting in the middle, but again, not making someone wrong for the fact that they like their space, not taking their need for space personally and taking it as a personal rejection or attack, which a lot of anxious people can do, is like, if you loved me, you'd want to spend all of your time with me. And the fact that you would want to spend time alone or with friends that doesn't involve me is hurtful to me, right? We take that as some sort of comment on our not good enoughness. And I think that what that does is not only does it contribute to your hurt and pain and suffering, but it actually guilts them for a perfectly valid need, and it makes them less likely to ask for that when they need it. What happens when an avoidant person doesn't feel safe to ask for the space that they need when they need it is they bottle it up and they try and just suck it up and be fine, and then they snap, and that's when we get really strong deactivation and an avoidant person going to full withdrawal, disappearing, stonewalling, whatever. It's because they've tried to suppress and they've tried to push their limits, and then they've just cracked and they've had to pull away out of pure necessity. So as much as it's counterintuitive, it's actually in your best interest to cultivate an environment in your relationship where both of you feel really safe to voice needs, and there's no personal attack in that. There's no threat in their need for space. You're actually really actively supporting the fact that they need time to themselves, and that they need to do that as part of then being able to come back to you as their best self. So really respect that, carve out a lot of acceptance time space for them to be doing their own thing, so that they don't feel like their autonomy and their independence is being subsumed into the relationship, because that is one of the biggest fears of avoidant leaning folks, is that being in a relationship means losing yourself. Okay, the next tip is communicate really clearly and directly. Again, if you're more anxious, this probably goes against your default because you will struggle to voice needs directly. You will hope that your partner can read your mind. And that can come from a bit of projection because anxious folks tend to be really, really attuned to other people and tend to think about their relationship all the time and go, oh, if they're doing this, they're probably thinking that and needing this and da da da, spinning the wheels in the background constantly, right? Your avoidant partner is probably not doing that. And so to expect them to be reading your mind, knowing exactly how you're feeling and why, and knowing exactly what you need is not reasonable or fair. And really help yourselves out, both of you, by just being direct and clear in your communication of how you're feeling and what you're needing. Take all of the guesswork out of it. Take all of those unspoken expectations out of your relationship. Because particularly if you're in an anxious avoidant dynamic, your baseline assumptions about what is normal and reasonable and to be expected in relationship probably quite different. Not better or worse, just different. So let's eliminate the guesswork, be really direct. And again, I like to think that this is part of the gift of these relationships, is that as an anxious person, that's part of your growth work, is what are my needs and can I voice them directly? Because that's not comfortable for most of us. So figuring that out and being really specific. So don't expect them to read your mind. Don't expect them to just know how you're feeling, particularly around maybe emotional support. Some avoidant folks are not so comfortable talking about emotions. They might not know what to say or how to respond. So help them out by sharing what you need and how they can best support you in feeling loved and cared for in the relationship. That's really going to serve both of you really well. The next one is be really mindful of blame, criticism, accusation, because that is going to elicit a really big fight back response, a lot of defensiveness. One of the core wounds at the heart of avoidant attachment is feeling defective, feeling like a failure. Whereas anxious attachment is more around unworthiness and unlovability, avoidant attachment is there's such a drive to be successful in their relationships. I really want to feel like I'm doing good. And so unfortunately, what happens in relationship with someone more anxious, where there's this raising the bar thing that I was speaking about before, the avoidant person just feels this like overwhelming, relentless thing of like, you're just never happy with me. Nothing I try is good enough. You're always upset about something. If it's not this, it's that. And that can become really demoralizing, in addition to, eliciting a lot of defensiveness when someone really is trying, but it's just missing the mark for whatever reason. So be really mindful of that. Be mindful of some of the anxious attachment protest behaviors that can be very critical, can be very controlling. They're not going to be well received by someone with more avoidant patterns. So be mindful of those, take responsibility, and try a softer approach that is less accusatory, less attacking, and makes space for the other person's experience. Because again, even taking anxious avoidant dynamics out of it, if we're leading with attack and denying the validity of someone's experience, they are, of course, going to be very defensive. That's just human nature. We all do that. So be mindful of that. And the last tip that I want to give you on how to support your avoidant partner is to learn their love languages. So recognize that they probably give and receive love differently to you. If you're more anxious, you're probably defaulting to the more overt and direct displays of love, like physical touch and words of affirmation, all of the things that feel like you're being really like directly wrapped in love in a way that feels really reassuring. For avoidant folks, they're likely to lean more towards indirect modes of expressing and receiving love. So things like acts of service, things like quality time, things like gift giving. And, if we aren't aware of that, we don't know what to look for. And we might be missing a lot of the ways that our partner is trying to convey their love. And all we're focusing on is the things that they're not doing. So I think that while, of course, we can share with someone, here are the ways that I like to be loved. Here's what feels really good for me. We don't want to just completely ignore their efforts because we're not recognizing them, we're not seeing them. So look out for the ways that your partner might be trying to help you out, or giving you a gift, or organizing for you guys to do an activity together. That might not mean much for you, but that might be really meaningful for them, and they might be using that as a way to feel connected to you. So try and be more present to and aware of the ways in which your partner might be showing their love that you might not otherwise be tuned into. So I hope that was helpful. 5 ways to support your avoidant partner. If you like this video, make sure that you subscribe. I'm putting new content up all the time from my podcast on attachment, but also exclusive content like this. And let me know in the comments if there's anything in particular that you'd like me to cover. I'm more than happy to make videos for you guys, depending on what you're interested in hearing about. So thanks for your support, and I'll see you in the next video.